Good night, everyone, and thank you for joining us once again for Dialogue with the Diaspora. I am Diane Haylock. Tonight we have the pleasure of speaking to two outstanding Belizean women living in the United Kingdom. They have made great strides in their respective fields. We start off first with Dr. Joanne Griffith, who is a counseling psychologist specializing in clinical settings from developmental, cognitive, behavioral, and feminist perspectives. Joanne holds a doctoral degree from Boston College, Massachusetts, and currently lectures and supervises undergraduate and postgraduate students at De Montfort University, Leicester, England. She also facilitates workshops in her specialist fields. Joanne has provided services to individuals and organizations internationally as a researcher, educator, trainer, and manager in mental and public health. Joanne, welcome to the show. It is such a pleasure seeing you here after such a long time.
Indeed, thank you so much.
How are you keeping in these very challenging times with this pandemic?
Well, I think these moments of connecting with my Belizean folk is always a helpful interlude, shall we say, since we can't leave the plague island just yet to actually go and visit Belize. So thanks for reaching out to me and making me feel at home again.
I can imagine. But we like to start off here in our conversation by asking people about their Belizean roots. You know, I mean, I may know it, but our listeners or viewers don't know very much about you. So perhaps you could tell us a little bit about your life, your family in Belize, when and how you ended up in the UK.
Sure. Actually, yeah. So really, I mean, you know, I'm a Belize City girl. Yeah. SDAer, of course. I know I might be hitting some toes there, but you know, that's how we go, right? I lived in Belize a lot, obviously, most of my life, although I have lived in other countries, you know, going abroad for studies in the US, doing various other things. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of family left in Belize. We all seem to have itchy feet, shall I say, and I've moved on to other countries and other places. But I think that's very Belizean, isn't it? Certainly.
Yes.
But yeah, my roots really are in teaching in Belize, you know, and working with you, for example, Di,
yes.
a long time ago, and many other, I think, very prominent Belizean women in Belize city, in Belize country as well, for many, many years before my itchy feet took me further away to the United Arab Emirates, for example, and now back to the UK. And I'm still hoping that sometime I'll be able to, you know, get the itchy feet back to Belize for a bit more work, shall we say.
Well, prior to the pandemic, how often did you get back?
Probably at least once a year. My mom was still living in Belize City.
Yes.
My father died some years ago, but it's, you know, so. And obviously I have so many friends there, and it's just so nice to be able to go there and enjoy Belize for what it is, you know. That's something that, you know, try to do quite often, just to go to somewhere new whenever I go back to Belize as well. But obviously, yes, being in the midst of pandemic, we were destined to go last year for a really major celebration. I was going to do the whole block party thing to celebrate with friends. But I guess maybe later this year, maybe next year, hopefully we'll be able to go. Yes.
Hopefully, for sure. Yeah. Joe, from your bio, I know for sure that you've been keeping very busy. Tell us a bit more about your job at the university and some of your other professional involvements.
Officially, and take that very closely, I'm hired as a senior lecturer at the university, and we have a psychology division, and I'm part of that division. I'm actually one of the few practitioners, and was originally one of two of the practitioners, so to speak, who were in the division. That's changed. I've got some great, you know, team members now. But one of the things that I really got into after a while was obviously continue to do my consultancy work. And again, this is where you and I connected quite a few times, didn't we? But consultancy work, for example, developing, implementing work within the community. So for example, we did some parenting work with a London community, social workers, frontline workers and so on. So I got involved in quite a bit of that program management, really. Again, that comes from my work with the previously in international public health. So some of that management has crossed over into my current role in the university. So besides lecturing and research and all of the sort of typical things that academics are supposed to do, a lot of my work is actually management. And right now I am mainly a program manager, program leader, as we say within the university, for those of us who are academics, is with a group that is national. So the UK government set up a what's called an improving access to psychological therapies, and it is mainly in England. There are a couple other sites in Wales and in Scotland, but generally speaking in England. And what we do is we basically educate and train new practitioners in cognitive behavioral therapy. That's the basic foundation for our work. We obviously work with the National Health Service, so they employ these interns, these trainees, and we basically then work with them to educate and train them in these particular interventions. So they're sort of like, again, like a front line, after you go to a GP and the GP says, okay, you know what, you're anxious and I'm going to give you some pills, but really you should go see somebody. So that's the next line up from that. And the idea is to just problem solve. So it's trying to take away from the stigma of mental health, mental illness, and really giving people an opportunity to say, you know what, I've got a temporary problem. I'm anxious because this pandemic is just making me crazy. The dog needs therapy, the children need therapy, everybody needs therapy. What can we do? So this is kind of a frontline intervention, very brief, very focused, and just to try and help people overall, outside of the pandemic as well, to kind of just carry on with their daily lives. So that's been a big focus of my work right now with this particular program.
That must be very challenging, Jo, especially to have to do this, I suppose, most of this is, if not all of it, virtually.
Yes, we're learning a lot. Talk about a social experiment, we've been handed it and we're all trying to figure it out because we have obviously recognized in the research in the past, we had recognized that people do need that human contact, and even if you're doing computerized CBT, for example, you still want to make that connection with somebody beforehand. You want to be with a human being before you actually engage with therapeutic intervention. So it's really been quite interesting. And I think also from the side of the practitioners as well, recognizing how difficult it is to convey the empathic, for example, approach when you're working remotely, because there are distractions and it doesn't quite come across in the same way, I think, working remotely. So we've learned a lot. We are trying to be creative with what we're doing. I think there's nothing worse than, for example, when, internet goes out in the middle of a really intense emotional moment, isn't it? Yeah. So there's a lot that we are trying to understand right now, I think, and it's really, I think, also helping maybe people to perhaps look at mental health and mental illness a little bit differently as well, because it's almost become kind of normal in the pandemic to not be okay, to be anxious, to be sad because of all the losses that we're facing. Simple things like being able, we were talking before about just being able to for me to go to Belize and see friends and just be in that community. And it's a major loss. It feels, the impact is very intense. For those of us who like to be with our friends and family, I should say.
Indeed. Jo, tell us a bit about your being a national professional working in DC some time ago with the Pan American Health Organization / World Health Organization. Tell us a bit about that, because you went in as a Belizean national.
I did indeed. Yes, it's been interesting. I think that, Belizeans really are, we have so many skills, so many abilities, and luckily, sometimes we are able to promote them and have them recognized in terms of these opportunities that we get. And this was one of the ones that I did get through my volunteer work. When I was in Belize, I think I used to do a lot of volunteer work. I don't do as much here because I don't know, for some reason, volunteering here is not quite as normal as I think it is in Belize. And so through my volunteer work, I was selected to go and be a resident with the Pan American Health Organization, which is part, of course, of the World Health Organization. And that residency was in psychology. It was looking at public policy in the Americas, in the Caribbean, and so on, was an amazing experience. And I said the management part of that, especially, was the ability to learn how to network appropriately. All of those skills, that knowledge has really stood me well in terms of coming over to the UK. Actually, even when I was in the UAE as well, one of the reasons I was hired to go there, for example, was because I had this background of, developing and creating and implementing programs and projects and so on. So, because that was another case of starting a therapeutic, a counseling psychology division in the UAE at the university, which was a little bit different from what people were used to.
I can imagine that whole part of the world must be a totally different kind of experience, huh?
Yeah, that took some interesting, but again, that experience, like I volunteered, again, I have a very dear friend in the US who was doing a lot of volunteer work in Africa, and I volunteered with her to do some conflict mediation work in Uganda. So a lot of those, those experiences that I always say to my students, you have to be open, even though you're terrified about the idea of trying something new, and you think, oh God, I don't know anything about this. I have no idea what I'm doing here. But being open to that opportunity, and I think Belizeans have that ability, I think, to do that because of how we sit geographically and culturally and so on. So it stands us really well once we move into other countries, into other cultures. I think that's a real Belizean thing. Okay, I'm owning it as Belizean, right?
Indeed. Did you always know that psychology was the field that you wanted to pursue, or how did that come about? It's not one of those areas that we think of as we prepare to go on to higher education. It's not one of those areas that we think of, is it?
It's definitely not. It's amazing how popular it actually has become in the world, but no. To be fair, I always thought I was going to be a medical doctor. I mean, I started off with all the right courses and so on, so to speak. But I was debating between obviously being a psychiatrist, really, and then I thought, and this is where you'll hear how when you're young, you're not really sure what the heck is going on in life. But I thought, it'll be faster for me to get a doctorate in psychology. Turns out it was a lot longer. Just in case anybody wants to know, it's a heck of a lot longer if you go through the US route. The UK one is a bit faster, and if I had known that, maybe I would come to the UK sooner to try and do studies here. But it was interesting because I've always been fascinated by that combination of biology and psychology, if you wish. And that's what really led me. I mean, and having just really great teachers as well along the way. Although I have had people say to me when I was younger, why don't you go into computer science, which I could have done too. But I think it's about being curious about people and wanting to help. I think, again, that's why I volunteered so much when whenever I can, because I really believe that we need to share our skills, our abilities with others.
It's a part of the Belizean DNA, isn't it?
I think so too. We are used to that kind of, again, that interaction, that social nature. I think we somehow we cultivate that quite a lot in Belize. I think it is a strength, definitely. Yeah. It makes it easier for us to fit in. Let's put it that way. Into different cultures and cross different boundaries and so on that other people find more challenging usually.
In the course of our work together, of course, we talked numerous times about the lack of mental health services for our Belizean people. But we're pleased to see an increase in mental health professionals in Belize now. Of course, the numbers are still very, very limited. Can you talk a bit about your own experience in that area and any thoughts on really maybe collaborating with other professionals or mental health programs in Belize?
Yeah, I think, again, stigma is something that is ongoing, and so it's very difficult to really really, again, it's that trust. I mean, and Belize is still a very small community, so to speak. So I think it's also much more difficult to maintain that trusting relationship, which is so critical to good therapeutic relationships as well. Yeah, I had noticed how many more Belizeans were taking up the mantle, so to speak, of doing this work, and really pleased to see that. Actually, I have been talking to somebody about a project that I've wanted to do with Belize for like the last, 5 years. And the project is sort of continuing on the work that I do here in the UK, which is to implement that sort of brief therapeutic intervention, because I think that was something that I also noticed in the Caribbean. Is that, in Central America too, for that matter, is that people don't want to spend their lifetime in therapy. It's expensive, it's time-consuming, it's energy draining, and all of those things. So really being able to, I'd like to do this, and I have spoken with a couple of people about trying to find a way, and I know there are quite a few people out there that I am planning on hitting up. This is one of the reasons I wanted to go Belize so badly as well, to meet and just have a discussion about ways that I can transfer some of these ideas, which I think would fit in well with our culture. So yeah, I have a lot of ideas already about that. I just need to be able to get off this island and back in my mainstream, shall I say, working with some Belizeans, because I know there's a lot of great work that's been happening as well. I see on a national level too, which I would really like to tap into, and just to be able to, again, to provide some additional resourcing. Again, I can tap into what I've got here, and I've spoken to some of my students and even some of my team about, how would you feel about going to Belize? And they're like, yeah, totally ready for that. So it would be interesting, and I would like to. So I'm putting that out there. Yes. Everybody who's listening to me.
I'm sure somebody out there will hear you, and I certainly will pass it on to some of the people that I know.
Thank you. Yes. I really appreciate that, because it's been too long now and I need to get it off the ground.
Right. Joe, we can go on with this conversation forever and ever. It's really been a pleasure catching up with you. But let me give you an opportunity for any final words before we go.
I think again, this is such a great idea to talk to those of us who, want to feel more connected to Belize, and also want to remind my fellow Belizeans that we're here for to try and continue that interaction as well, that community spirit that is so Belizean. And I look forward to hearing from people if you're interested. I need to do some volunteer work, basically. So let me know. And hopefully I'll be back in Belize soon again. Thank you very much.
Let's hope. Joe, thank you so much for joining the dialogue. Stay well and safe.
Thank you. You too, guys. Great work. Keep it up.
Viewers, we will take our first break and be right back with another remarkable guest. Welcome back to Dialogue with the Diaspora. Diane Haylock here with you again. My next guest is a chartered civil engineer with a master's degree in environmental coastal engineering from the University of Southampton in the United Kingdom. Melinda Odum has worked in engineering for over 20 years and has led a number of high-profile and high-stake projects, including the detailed design of Port Nador, a $1 billion Moroccan port project, and Rothera Wharf and King Edward's Point Wharf project for the British Antarctic Survey. Melinda is a champion of the next generation and actively encourages continuous personal improvement in junior staff. In the wider community, she works to promote STEM within the Black community in Southampton, and in particular to Black girls. Good night and welcome to the show, Melinda.
Thank you for having me, Diane.
What an impressive background you have there. I'm amazed as I caught up with who you are and what you have been doing. But before we get to that, tell us a bit about the Belizean Connection. We always want to know that part. Where did you grow up? And about your family.
Yes, well, I spent my childhood years, I did in San Ignacio for a start, and then secondly in Belmopan. I attended Sacred Heart Primary School in San Ignacio, where I lived with my grandparents, Ethel and Gosman Ellis. And then I went to Belmopan Comprehensive School for secondary school, following which I went to Belize City to attend sixth form at St. John's College sixth form. My parents, Lucia Ellis and Osman Engleton, are both Belizeans. And my father is a civil engineer, hence the heritage of continuing in that heritage. And my mom has been working actively within the community in Belize for some time.
Yes, well, your entire family has done a lot of work in Belize. Of course, I'm familiar with your mom as well as your aunties. So I know, and I know some members of the family very, very well.
Yes, my wider extended family are an inspiration to me as well. My Aunt Cynthia Ellis, Zoila Ellis, Ken Roy, Sandra, yes, a very big family. Very, very keen to work with the Garifuna community as well, as we all have Garifuna heritage. We're very proud of that as well.
Yeah. What inspired you to pursue a career in engineering? What was that journey like for you?
Well, I wanted to be a civil engineer from when I was a very young child. My father's a civil engineer, so I knew about the profession through him and the work that he did. And as a young woman in secondary school, I was quite keen on seeing how I could make an impact in the world. And certainly a practical impact was what appealed to me. What could I do? How could I solve problems that would have benefit to society? And for me, civil engineering is a type of profession that really that's what we're all about, making sure that we have infrastructure, that we have the facilities possible for society, civilization to function. And so the interest grabbed me in secondary school, and I had the benefit after secondary and doing my A-levels to spend a year with the Ministry of Works in Belize to understand what it was all about. There I was introduced to all aspects of civil engineering, from roads to geotechnical lab testing. I also got introduced to surveying, building structures, and I got a picture of what it was all about, and it didn't put me off. So I was able to then go on to study at the University of the West Indies, where I did a bachelor's degree in civil engineering. And then I returned to Belize in the year 2000 and worked for a year on the Southern Highway upgrading project, which at the time, that was the first time that the Southern Highway in Belize was being paved and made into an all-weather road. So I spent a year there, and it was a remote job, but it was, again, practical, being involved in a hands-on project that was going to make a difference to the southern part of Belize. And then what happened during my undergraduate degree, one of my projects included looking at coastal erosion along the coastline of Belize. And it really sparked my interest in that specific aspect of civil engineering, coastal defense, coastal protection. And I was, again, given with the benefit of a scholarship, I was able to attend the University of Southampton here in the UK, where I did a master's degree in environmental coastal engineering. And from there, I've started working and continued within that field, working in projects that involve coastal design and construction of coastal defenses, ports, harbors, jetties, anything to do with the interface between the land and the sea.
So when you went on to do your master's, you pretty much ended up staying in the UK.
Yes, I did.
I suppose it had some romantic reasons as well.
Initially, no. To be honest, initially it was about the experience. It was about the opportunity to work on large projects, to learn. I knew about becoming a chartered civil engineer, and I knew that there were clearer routes with large companies to be able to do that. And then it became romantic because I met my husband here and stayed.
So do you currently work for a company, or are you an independent contractor?
I work for a company its name is Rambo. It has a head office in Denmark. Originally, the company was a smaller British company, but we were bought over. And so with being within a larger company, that's how I've become within the last 8 to 10 years involved in much larger projects, such as the Port Nador project in Morocco that you referred to earlier, and being able to travel to Antarctica.
Well, I want to hear a bit more about this new wharf, which is like at the end of the earth. You know, the Rothera Wharf. It is the largest such facility in Antarctica. Huh?
Yes, it is. It's a large. It's large for Antarctica because there's any development that happens in Antarctica has to be done very carefully because of the fragility of the environment. It's important to make sure that it's preserved. But the reason why it was done is in order to facilitate a larger vessel that has been built to transport goods and people to Antarctica for the purpose of science. So our job was to design and assist the British Antarctic Survey in the supervision of the construction of this new wharf. And so my job, as the project is now complete, what I did last year was to travel to Antarctica to help with the construction supervision, while the wharf was being completed.
So the wharf is completed now?
It is.
Yeah.
Is, yeah.
And there is another wharf,
at King Edward's Point, which is north of the main Antarctic continent, is another wharf. And again, this being one of the stations that the British Antarctic Survey goes to in order to conduct research. This particular site, KEP as we refer to it, is on an island that has a very rich wildlife and lots of seals. They have to work around the seals when they were building the wharf. It's quite fascinating. But the wharf needed to be built in order to accommodate this larger ship that has been commissioned for moving people and goods around. At Rothera Wharf, at Rothera Antarctic Station, there is also a runway. So I was lucky enough to not have to travel there by ship, but actually flew in. But at KEP, the only way to get to the island is by boat. So this wharf was very important to the community that does live there, and to the research station that's there as well.
Melinda, what has it been like for you working in this male-dominated profession?
It has been, it's had its challenges, especially when I was younger, new to the UK, new to the culture, trying to understand how to navigate my way through work and in life. But I think I've had the benefit of mentors and strong support at home that has helped me. But it hasn't been an easy ride, and it has. I am very happy to see that more young women are entering into the profession, and that there is more drive to ensure that there is a more equal opportunity through different routes for women and people of diverse backgrounds to be able to work here within the field. It has its challenges, but we continue working through it.
Which of these projects have been that have made you the most proud to work on?
I would say the project in Antarctica, even though it is smaller in budget and in size compared to some of the other projects that I've worked on. I just believe that the importance of the impact that it has on what we can learn about, or the access to Antarctica to be able to learn about our world, is important, and that is why I would think that I'm most proud about it. And I can see that understanding our world, understanding how our climate, how our world responds to climate, is also important to Belize, because we have a really serious vested interest in understanding what is happening with regards to climate change, and because of the impact that it will have on us. And so I can see a direct relationship between what I was doing and the rest of the world.
Share with us what you're doing to champion the next generation of engineers.
Well, I am a STEM ambassador, so science, technology, engineering, and maths. That means that I have undertaken some training to be able to work within schools here in the UK, and what I intend to do is to also take this to Belize as much as I can remotely, and what I do is try to share my own experience about why I enjoy working in this field, and why I consider it a good field for young women and young men to work in. I have attended schools events. I have also, within the Black community here in Southampton, sponsored essay competitions, or to get young people engaged in the topic. And I'm also working with other STEM professionals here within the Black community for them to also share their story through videos that can be shared to young people, so that they can see that for them to be able to see other role models within this field.
So the inspiration for doing the STEM program in the Black community basically comes from that need to be able to expose the Black community in that area into some of these fields that they perhaps would never consider.
I think that it's important to be able to see people like ourselves in different professions. And within the STEM profession, there are, as I saw within Southampton and within locally, I saw that there aren't that many people who speak about the work that they do and use their own experience to encourage young people into the field. And I think that it is very important for us to do so, because our young people wouldn't consider it an option if they, it might seem too abstract if they don't see some of the people around them and who look like them
And
working.
especially Black girls in particular, no?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I always remember I was of the age of, I was in my mid-20s, and I was traveling to the west of the country just on a holiday. And someone met me and asked me, "Are you a nurse?" And nursing is a great field to be in, and absolutely very important as well. But because there are so many black women in nursing,
Yeah.
they didn't think that I could do anything else.
Exactly.
And that was quite funny to me ask that.
Yes, yeah. So how does the program you're doing, the STEM program you're doing with young Black girls in Southampton, how does it actually work?
What I do, so I'll give you an example of my most recent project. We produced an essay competition, and we're running it annually now. And it is based around encouraging young women to write, first of all, because at the moment with COVID, we can't do any hands-on activities. So we've encouraged them to write about a specific topic, and this year's topic is around climate change and the impact that it has on why do they think that it is important for us to make changes in our own personal life with respect to climate change. So that particular essay competition has been run, and we have received the essays back, and we'll be doing a judging competition on that. We'll be judging, that, and in line with Women in Engineering Day in June, we're going to be announcing our winners and presenting prizes.
What kind of numbers did you?
At the moment, we've had in total over this period just over 10 entries. So not as many as we would have expected or hoped, but we're getting there, and we're hoping that with more and more momentum, we'll be able to do more. Now, when we weren't in COVID and prior to me traveling to Antarctica, I attended I was one of a group of other STEM ambassadors where we were in a speed networking event, and for about over 2 days, I think a total of 300 students came through this particular event, and this was face to face, where we basically were sat at different tables and would be interviewed by groups of young women. And this is where they would come and ask us lots of questions about the kind of work that we do and why we're interested in civil engineering or other STEM activities, and how we would, what type of subjects we studied and why we studied them. And that is the kind of outreach that we would be able to achieve in non-pandemics, non-pandemic situations. But yeah, when I'm hoping that once this is ended and we're out of lockdown, we'll be able to do more.
For sure. What advice would you have for young women in Belize who might wish to pursue or are trying to succeed in careers traditionally dominated by men?
I would encourage young women to basically continue striving, believe in yourself, and also be gentle with yourself, and don't be afraid of being I know this might be considered a cliche at this point in time, your authentic self. I have found that as I've as I've become older, I feel more comfortable being using the other parts of my personality that may not be considered macho or masculine, but about talking about compromise, about collaborating, because none of these projects that I've worked on have been done by just me. I've been leading a team, and in order to do so, I need to be able to listen to people. I need to be able to collaborate with people. I need to be able to influence people. And that process requires communication skills, which I develop over time. And that is a skill that many young women have. And of course, the technical skills need to be there in terms of being able to do the maths and understand the principles of engineering, but you can still bring those parts of your personality that are valuable as a woman to the job.
Melinda, do you have any final words for our viewers?
I would like to encourage our young people and the viewers certainly to consider the STEM activities and to consider STEM as a great career. I would also like to encourage our viewers to continue to encourage our young people in these fields, because beyond the job itself, there are also lots of skills relating to problem solving, relating to the resilience of getting to a solution, and also trying to think critically. That would be of benefit in other parts of your life.
Melinda, I am so delighted to have had this opportunity to have this conversation with you today. I'm really impressed, to say the least, at the work that you have been doing. And I want to thank you for having joined us here on Dialogue with the Diaspora. I certainly encourage you to, as you said, share that with Belize, the STEM project in particular, when the time allows us to do that. Yes. So thanks again for being with us.
Thank you very much for having me. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you.
Okay, viewers, we will take our final ad break and be right back. Viewers, thank you for staying tuned into Dialogue with the Diaspora. We are at the end of another inspiring dialogue with Belizeans living abroad. When we consider what it means to break glass ceilings, our two guests tonight have unapologetically but inspiringly shattered them. What they have been able to achieve and the mark they have imprinted in their careers inspires our girls and women here in Belize. We look forward to continued collaboration between Dr. Griffith and mental health professionals here at home. Her knowledge bank can certainly be a conduit through which our mental health care system in Belize can strengthen, and through which public knowledge about mental health can be expanded in order to eliminate the taboo that surrounds the issue of mental health. And our second guest, Chartered Civil Engineer Melinda Odum, might have shattered glass ceilings using apparatus of her own brilliant design. The projects that she has been a part of are spectacular, but what she represents and her impression upon young Black girls especially are most impressive. We tip our hats to both women and look towards the future with optimism that many more Joanne Griffiths and Melinda Odums will emerge right here at home for our national development and for the continued advancement of women and girls. On that note, I will sign off for now, but we will be back again next Thursday at 7 p.m. here on CBTV and on Colorblind's Facebook page. Do enjoy the remainder of your night. Continue to social distance, wear your face mask, and remain vigilant. Good night, and take good care.